Okay, before we get started, I want to go ahead and once again apologize for this one being late. Once again, I do have a bit of an understandable reason for that, because we had some certain troubles with making dinner tonight. We still managed to do so, but that was only a few hours ago. I just had some like a couple hours ago, and it was delicious. So I hope you guys can understand that as to why this one's coming up so late. But also, before we get started with this reaction, I want to also give you a little bit more of a background, as well as context as to the kind of game we're going to be looking at from the Badvent calendar. I want to state for the record that I myself have hardly ever played horror games. Not because I haven't really cared that much about them, but because simply, they just don't really pique that much to my personal interest in video games, especially when I have horror movies like in my Blu-ray collection over there, what I could be watching instead. And B, I'm one of those people who I don't get scared too often, but when I get scared, I get really scared. Just saying. But with that said, this game is anything but. I'm sure many of you, as well as myself, even if you have never played them, are very well aware of the Resident Evil franchise. They're known as some of the most iconic horror games in the video game industry, right up there with Silent Hills and a few others. This game is not a Resident Evil. It's not. And I haven't even played the thing, and I could tell just by looking at it that it's not Resident Evil. And this is really bad timing, since this is coming out. This came out shortly after Resident Evil 6, which already got a lot of hate for how much it disrespected the Resident Evil franchise. Again, I may not be much into horror, but that doesn't mean I can't understand the appeal of it and how much it means to a lot of people. And for a lot of people, horror games are very appealing and can be very intense yet still fun to play. They're just not exactly my cup of tea. One other good example of how I can really sympathize with these people is when Konami canceled Silent Hills. I don't think I need to go into great detail about why that is also infuriating, as well as the things that followed after that. Let's just say I wouldn't be surprised if at this point in time that Konami finally decided to shut down its doors, because let's be honest, they are a manufacturing company for things like pachinko machines, not a game development studio anymore. Especially since they got rid of the only man who was keeping that company afloat. Well, enough prattling on, so without further ado, let's get it on! Caddicarus presents the Badvent Calendar.
My lord, do you realize how difficult it was for me to not pick Resident Evil Survivor here? Resident Evil Umbrella Corps pisses me off so much that I'm pretending it was vaguely difficult to decide between two bad games to talk about in a YouTube video. But you know what, at least Survivor was released nearly 20 years ago and was when Resident Evil as a franchise was still in its infancy compared to what it's like
pretty much.
Umbrella Corps has absolutely no leg to stand on as a Resi game or even as an online multiplayer shooter. And I'm not being a contrarian for the sake of it, this is essentially a sequel/spiritual successor to Operation Raccoon City, another Resident Evil multiplayer shooter. And I didn't think Operation Raccoon City was a complete bastardization of the series myself. It was tolerable. A spin-off I didn't care much about whatsoever, but I could see the appeal to an extent. This though, what the hell happened here? With its dark and lifeless graphics, repetitive shallow gameplay, extremely weak main character that dies in a few hits no matter what's going on, broken matchmaking system that adds you into matches with people nearly 100 levels above you, barely any semblance to the series it's from, and twisted character animations that can't even hold guns properly. I still can't believe this game released in 2016 and I paid nearly £30 for it. One time I started a fresh match, died immediately as soon as the match began, and lost the entire thing despite the game telling me I didn't die at all. Not only that, but whether you do the single player missions or multiplayer...
That is just... If your game is that broken, you really shouldn't have released this. It really frustrates me that there are still people out there who have the nerve to put games out that are not finished. Like, seriously, you'd think by this point we all would have learned from the infamy that is big rigs over the road racing that you can't release something that's not finished. And no, I don't count the Reignited trilogy because that game technically is finished. It just has some minor performance issues and a few notable glitches. That's not the same thing. I'm thinking more on the lines of Fallout 76. Yeah, that sounds about right. Also, yeah, I do agree. Like, at least when a bad game in a franchise or from a long-going franchise, even before gaming was a thing, like, good example, some of the really bad Spider-Man and Godzilla games that were made for the Nintendo consoles way back in the 80s, like the NES, the SNES, and so on. Like, they had an excuse. They came out during the pioneering days of video games, and people still didn't exactly know the best way to handle them. But with games like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the 2014 Godzilla game, not the movie, I actually kind of liked the movie, despite its faults, but the game, oh boy, was I disappointed. Like, majorly disappointed. I'm not going to dwell too much on that factor. In fact, I might talk about that in a later date, but let's just say, with games this bad that are being made nowadays, what is their freaking excuse?
You do the same shit over and over again, collecting samples. Yeah, I guess that is what the Umbrella Soldiers would be doing in the Resi universe, but at least Operation Raccoon City
I guess.
and how they went around doing that kind of thing. Not just running around half-assed pre-existing maps from previous games, awkwardly other zombies or other players just to grab pointers MacGuffin to end a match. I'm not kidding either, the single-player missions especially are just this, over and over and over again, with text in between each part to give you some kind of story. And multiplayer matches are basically just...
And stopping one last time, the more I look at it, this basically looks and even kind of feels like a discounted version of zombies from the Call of Duty franchise. And those, even I can personally say, are really fun. I haven't played the most recent one from Black Ops 4 yet, but I will get to that eventually. But let's just say, if you're going to copy what someone else has already done, make sure you at least copy what made them fun. And not this piece of shit.
Standard death matches and this as well. Capcom thought this was worth £30 of your money. I have absolutely no problem with a game being multiplayer.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's probably like $40 in the US. Maybe the same, I don't know.
High of a price for something that looks and plays like one of the first ever online multiplayer games ever, but even more broken and boring, then sticking a well-established and loved franchise name on top of it to make money. Yeah, this should have been seen as nothing more than a scam. I mean, look at this even. In order to get additional rewards from killing enemies and such, you'd think that playing a little bit more strategically with headshots and stuff would get you more rewards. But not only is that untrue, meaning there's no point in getting any better at the shooting in this game, but if you do headshot an enemy, they just stand in place for seconds and seconds before dropping anything, wasting your time and making you vulnerable for your own skillful play landing a headshot. What more can I say? I'd rather play Survivor. I'd rather play this.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you need to wash your...
Oh god, that's a funny way of saying, yep, I would rather play that piece of crap over this big piece of crap. And from what I can see, and given that this game has made it on many worst games of 2016 lists, including on Pro Jared's, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say it's pretty bad. It doesn't even visually look like it's finished. Oh boy, I'm just hoping that over time we move past the idea that games are released unfinished, because things like this, it makes me think that we haven't evolved as far from the pioneering days of video games as much as I would like to think. Now I know that's kind of a narcissistic thing to say, considering games, there is no denying, games have come a long way. A lot of them now have compelling narratives, great characters, fantastic visuals, and most of the time some really solid gameplay. Which is why it hurts so bad, especially now when games like this can come out that has none of those qualities, doesn't even work in the multiplayer aspect, and like I said earlier, tries so desperately to copy what someone else did and doing it so poorly. Like, what the crap, Capcom? Why couldn't you just copy and copy, even if you had to do like a code for code copy of zombies from Call of Duty? That would have been so much better than what you gave us. Like, why couldn't you just do that? Why couldn't you just do that? It's not hard. It's not hard. So, yeah, that's about all the time we got, and that's about enough of my ramblings. It just really agitates me that games like this are still being made when we should have moved past that. But that's about all the time we got. If you liked the video, go ahead and comment, like, and or subscribe. And the other your suggestions, leave some in the comment section below. And as always, I'm King Gargantuas, and I'll see you all next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to me if you want to see more videos like this. Follow me on Twitter at King Gargantuas if you want to know what I'm up to. Thanks again guys, and I'll see you all next time.